The tunnel was pitch black, enemy forces blocking every exit, the elite squad trapped with no way out. Over the radio came desperate pleas. There's no path through, we're surrounded. Then a small figure emerged from the shadows, her voice steady. I see a way no one else can reach. In the flickering emergency lights, Sergeant Maya Chen, barely 5 feet tall, slipped into a narrow vent shaft that would have been impossible for anyone else. In that moment, she wasn't too small. She was exactly what survival looked like. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Chen stood at attention, her 5-foot frame nearly lost. Among the towering special operators of Task Force Delta, at 29 years old, she had the determined eyes of someone who had spent a lifetime being underestimated. Her black hair was pulled tight into a regulation bun under her cap as she waited for Captain Reynolds to finish reviewing her transfer application. "Specialist Chen," Reynolds finally spoke, looking down at her with barely concealed amusement. "Your technical qualifications are impressive, but Special Operations has physical requirements for a reason. This isn't personal. You're simply too small for the demands of this unit." The dismissal stung, but it wasn't new. Maya had heard variations of this rejection throughout her military career. Too short to reach equipment, too small to carry standard gear, too slight to handle the physical demands. She nodded professionally, keeping her face neutral despite the familiar burn of disappointment. "Sir, with respect, my size can be an advantage in certain tactical situations. I've modified standard procedures to compensate for." "That's enough, Specialist," Reynolds cut her off. "You'll remain with Support Division where your skills are better suited." Dismissed. As Maya walked away, she heard the snickers from a group of operators lounging nearby. One voice carried clearly, "Imagine bringing her on an actual mission. What's she gonna do, hide in someone's backpack?" The laughter echoed off the concrete walls of Forward Operating Base Orion, following her down the corridor. She kept her shoulders straight, her stride purposeful. They couldn't see what she carried inside, determination forged through years of proving herself. At the Support Division barracks, Maya methodically unpacked her gear. The small room was sparse, a narrow bed, metal desk, and storage locker. On the desk, she placed a framed photo of her grandfather in his military uniform. He had been the one who taught her that limitations existed only in the mind. "You're back early," observed her roommate, Technical Specialist Priya Sharma, looking up from her laptop. "Let me guess, they took one look and decided you couldn't possibly belong in Special Operations?" Maya shrugged, arranging her tactical gear. "Same story, different day." Priya shook her head in frustration. "It's ridiculous. You outscored half the operators in the tactical simulations last month. Doesn't matter if I can't reach the minimum height requirement." Maya sat on her bed, pulling out her tablet. "But I'm not giving up. There's more than one path forward." What no one at Base Orion knew was that Maya Chen had spent every off-duty hour for the past 18 months training herself beyond standard protocols. In the forgotten utility tunnels beneath the base, she had created an unofficial training course, narrow passages, confined spaces, vertical shafts that required techniques no standard training covered. During night shifts when the main training facility was empty, she practiced with modified equipment she had engineered herself, lightweight versions of standard gear, reconfigured to work with her smaller frame rather than against it. She studied structural schematics, ventilation systems, access points that larger operators would never consider viable. Maya wasn't training to meet their standards. She was developing an entirely different approach to operations, one that turned her supposed weakness into a unique tactical advantage. The next morning, Maya reported for her usual shift in the Communication Support Center. The windowless room hummed with the sound of monitoring equipment as technicians tracked ongoing operations in the field. Maya's role was primarily diagnostic, ensuring systems remained operational, troubleshooting when they failed. Senior Technician Walter Green nodded as she took her station. Chun, I need you to run diagnostics on the emergency backup systems. Routine maintenance check. Yes, sir. Maya began the familiar process, fingers flying across the keyboard. The work was important, but far from the field operations she had trained for. Still, she approached each task with meticulous attention to detail. An hour into her shift, a notification flashed across her screen, an automated alert from a remote monitoring station. Maya frowned, running a verification protocol. The signal showed an anomalous heat signature at Outpost Kilo, a small forward base 30 miles north of their position. Sir, I'm picking up something unusual at Kilo, she called out. Green glanced over. Probably just equipment malfunction. The sensors there have been glitchy since that sandstorm last week. This pattern doesn't match typical sensor malfunction, Maya insisted, pulling up comparison data. It shows multiple heat signatures moving in a tactical formation. According to the duty roster, Kilo should be empty right now. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Green sighed, but came over to examine her screen. His expression shifted from annoyed to concerned. Run a cross-check with satellite imagery. Maya's fingers moved swiftly, pulling up the most recent satellite pass. The resolution was poor, but it confirmed her suspicion: unauthorized movement around a supposedly vacant outpost. Alert command, Green ordered, suddenly all business. This could be a hostile insertion. Within minutes, the command center was buzzing with activity. Maya stood to the side as officers assessed the situation. Captain Reynolds strode in, immediately taking charge. What's the status of our closest response team? He demanded. Delta team is on training exercises 20 miles south, reported the operations officer. They can redirect and reach Kilo in approximately 40 minutes. That's too long, Reynolds frowned. Intel suggests the hostiles are moving toward the weapons cache. If they access those explosives... Maya stepped forward, heart pounding. Sir, there's an underground maintenance tunnel system that connects our main base to all outposts, including Kilo. It was built as an emergency evacuation route but hasn't been used in years. Reynolds barely glanced at her. Those tunnels collapsed during the earthquake 2 years ago. They're impassable. Not entirely, sir, Maya persisted. I've explored them during off hours. There are narrow passages still intact. Someone small enough could navigate through and reach Kilo in under 20 minutes. Now Reynolds looked at her fully, skepticism clear in his eyes. You're suggesting we send someone crawling through unstable tunnels instead of waiting for Delta? I'm suggesting I go, sir, Maya said firmly. I can reach Kilo, assess the situation, and relay intelligence to Delta before they arrive. At minimum, I could secure the weapons cache until reinforcements get there. The room fell silent. Green spoke up first. Chun knows communication systems better than anyone. If she could establish a direct link from Kilo, we'd have eyes on the ground. Reynolds' jaw tightened as he considered the options. The tactical display showed hostiles moving closer to the cache by the minute. Finally, he nodded curtly. Gear up, Specialist Chen. You have 5 minutes. This is reconnaissance only. You observe and report, nothing more. Is that clear? Crystal clear, sir, Maya replied, already moving toward the door. In the equipment room, Maya quickly assembled her kit: lightweight communications gear, a compact sidearm, night vision, and the specialized tools she had modified for her own use. As she prepared, the door opened and a tall figure entered, Staff Sergeant Marcus Rivera, Delta Team's point man. So you're the tunnel rat they're sending in, he said, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. This is a serious operation. Not a chance for you to play hero. Maya continued her preparations without looking up. I'm not playing anything, Sergeant. I'm doing my job. Your job is sitting behind a desk, making sure our comms work, Rivera countered. Leave the real operations to operators. Maya finally met his gaze. With respect, Sergeant, while you and Delta are still en route, I'll already be on site securing critical intelligence. Time matters right now more than ego. Something shifted in Rivera's expression, not quite respect, but reassessment. He picked up her tactical vest, noticing the modifications. You adapted standard equipment, he observed. Had to, Maya replied simply. Nothing fits off the rack when you're my size. Rivera nodded slowly. Delta's moving out in 10. We'll be coming in hot as soon as we get your intel. He paused at the door. Don't get yourself killed, Specialist. The paperwork would be a nightmare. 4 minutes later, Maya stood at the entrance to the maintenance tunnels, a heavy metal door tucked away in a forgotten corner of the base's lower level. Captain Reynolds and the operations team watched as she did a final equipment check. Your oxygen levels, location, and vital signs will be monitored continuously, the tech officer explained, attaching a small device to her vest. If any parameters drop into the red zone, you abort immediately. Maya nodded, securing her headset. Understood. Reynolds stepped forward, his expression grim. This is still strictly reconnaissance. Chun, you get eyes on the situation, report back. Then wait for Delta. Under no circumstances are you to engage hostile forces. Is that absolutely clear? Yes, sir. Eyes only, Maya confirmed, though inside she was already calculating contingencies. If the weapons were at risk, if lives were in danger, she knew what choice she would make. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a dark passage that plunged into the earth. The stale air carried the scent of dust and abandonment. Maya switched on her headlamp and gave a final nod to the team before stepping into the darkness. The passage quickly narrowed, sealing. Dropping until Maya was forced to crawl. For anyone of average height, the space would have been claustrophobic, nearly impassable. For her, it was tight but manageable. She moved swiftly, navigating by memory and the detailed mental map she had constructed during months of unauthorized explorations. Chun, status report, came Reynolds' voice through her headset. Proceeding as planned, she replied, squeezing through a partially collapsed section. No structural issues so far. Estimated arrival at junction point in 7 minutes. The tunnel system had been built decades earlier, a relic from when the region was a flashpoint in a different conflict. Most had forgotten it existed, dismissing it as obsolete infrastructure. Maya had discovered it by accident, then recognized its potential. What others saw as confined, unusable space, she saw as pathways only she could access. As she approached a major junction point, Maya paused. Her sensors detected vibration ahead, subtle tremors in the earth that suggested movement on the surface. She was directly beneath Outpost Kilo now. Command, I'm in position beneath Kilo, she whispered into her comm. Activating thermal. Imaging now. She carefully inserted a fiber optic camera through a small grate in the ceiling, connecting it to her tactical display. The screen illuminated with heat signatures, 8 figures moving methodically through the outpost. They were heavily armed and heading directly toward the armory section where the weapons cache was stored. Command, visual confirmation of 8 hostiles moving with tactical precision, Maya reported. They're armed with military-grade weapons and appear to be targeting the cache. They'll reach it in approximately 5 minutes. Reynolds' voice crackled in her ear. Delta is still 15 minutes out. Maintain position and continue observation. Maya watched as the hostiles approached the armory door. One carried what appeared to be specialized breaching equipment. They were prepared to access the reinforced storage facility. Sir, they have breaching capabilities, she reported urgently. Once they access those explosives, They could rig the entire outpost. Delta won't make it in time. A tense silence followed. Your orders remain the same, Specialist. Do not engage. Maya's mind raced, calculating options. The ventilation system for the armory ran directly through the tunnel where she was positioned. There was a maintenance access panel that would allow her to enter the armory from below, a point of entry the hostiles wouldn't be watching. Command, I can secure the cache, she said decisively. There's a maintenance access directly into the armory. I can seal it from the inside before they breach the main door. Negative, Chen, Reynolds' voice was sharp. That's a direct violation. Of your orders, you are not authorized to engage. Maya closed her eyes briefly, weighing the consequences. If those explosives were taken, the damage could be catastrophic. Lives would be lost, perhaps many lives. With respect, sir, she said calmly, I can't allow those weapons to fall into enemy hands. I'm proceeding to secure the cache. Before Command could respond, Maya was moving, navigating swiftly through a narrow ventilation shaft that led directly to the armory's lower level. The space was barely 18 inches wide, impossible for standard operators, but perfectly navigable for her small frame. Chun, I am ordering you to stand down. Reynolds' voice thundered in her ear, but Maya continued forward with grim determination. I understand the consequences of my actions, sir, she replied. But sometimes the right tactical decision isn't in the manual. She reached the access panel and carefully removed it, revealing the armory's interior. The reinforced room was dark, illuminated only by emergency lighting. Racks of weapons lined the walls, and in the center sat the high-value target, specialized explosives designed for precision demolition. Maya slipped inside, immediately moving to the control panel. She could hear the hostiles on the other side of the main door, setting up their breaching equipment. Time was running out. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she initiated emergency lockdown protocols. Steel shutters began descending over the weapons racks, and the secondary reinforcement on the main door activated with a heavy thud. The hostiles outside would now need hours, not minutes, to breach the armory. Cache secured, Maya reported. I've activated level 4 lockdown protocols. They can't access the weapons. What's your extraction plan, Chun? Came Rivera's voice, cutting in on the command frequency. Delta was still en route, but monitoring the situation. Maya grimaced. Working on that, Sergeant. The truth was stark. She was now trapped in the armory with no way out except through the main door, where 8 armed hostiles were attempting to breach. The ventilation shaft she had used to enter was now automatically sealed as part of the lockdown protocol. Outside the door, she heard angry voices as the hostiles realized something had changed. A moment later, gunfire erupted as they fired at the reinforced door in frustration. Command, hostiles are aware the cache is being defended, Maya reported, taking cover behind a reinforced cabinet. They're attempting forced entry. Reynolds' voice had lost its anger, replaced by tightly controlled concern. Delta is 12 minutes out. Can you hold your position? Affirmative, Maya replied, checking her sidearm. The door will hold. But they might have alternatives we haven't considered. As if in response to her words, a new sound emerged. The hostiles were moving around the perimeter of the armory, searching for another entry point. Maya's eyes darted to the ceiling, where another ventilation shaft, larger than the one she had used, provided air circulation to the room. They're going to try the main ventilation shaft, she realized aloud. It's wide enough for them to send someone through. Indeed, moments later she heard movement in the ceiling. They were already inserting someone into the shaft. Maya calculated quickly. The shaft entrance in the ceiling was 8 feet above the floor, too high for her to reach without assistance. But she knew this room better than they did. Moving silently, Maya repositioned behind a storage unit with direct line of sight to the ceiling vent. She removed a small device from her pack, a modified flashbang grenade she had adapted for confined spaces. If someone came through that vent, they would be momentarily incapacitated. "Delta, be advised," she whispered. "Hostiles attempting entry via ventilation. I'm in defensive position." "Hold tight, Chen," Rivera responded. "We're pushing the vehicles to maximum speed." 10 minutes out, the ceiling grate moved slightly, and Maya tensed. A fiber optic camera similar to her own snaked through the opening, scanning the room. She remained perfectly still, using the shadows and equipment for cover. The camera withdrew, and Maya heard muffled voices above. They were preparing to send someone down. She readied her flashbang, finger on the trigger. The grate slid open fully, and a rope dropped down. A moment later, a figure began descending rapidly into the armory. Maya waited until they were halfway down, then activated her device, tossing it precisely at the intruder's feet. The flashbang detonated with a controlled burst of light and sound. The hostile fell the remaining distance, hitting the floor hard. Before they could recover, Maya was moving, disarming them with swift efficiency and securing their hands with zip ties. "One hostile neutralized," she reported, dragging the unconscious figure into a corner. 7 remain outside. Above, confused. Shouting erupted as the team lost contact with their insertion specialist. Gunfire resumed against the main door with renewed intensity. "Shun, status update," Reynolds demanded. "Holding position," Maya replied, checking the prisoner's equipment. "They're getting desperate. The door will hold, but they might try explosives." Next, as if on cue, she heard the distinctive sound of charges being placed against the exterior of the main door. They were going to attempt to blow their way in, a dangerous move that might damage the explosives inside. "Command, they're setting breaching charges on the main door," Maya reported urgently. "If they detonate, it could trigger a sympathetic reaction with the materials stored here." Reynolds cursed. "Delta, what's your ETA?" 8 minutes, sir." Rivera responded. "We're redlining the engines." "Not good enough," Maya said grimly. "Those charges will blow in less than 2. She scanned the room desperately, searching for options. Her gaze fell on the environmental controls, specifically the fire suppression system. It was an older model, using halon gas to displace oxygen in case of fire. If activated, it would flood not just the armory, but the surrounding areas as well. "I have an idea," she said quickly. "But it's going to get uncomfortable for me." Before command could respond, Maya moved to the control panel and overrode the safety protocols. Warning lights began flashing as the system prepared to deploy. "All units be advised," she announced. Calmly, activating halon fire suppression in 30 seconds. "Hostiles in the immediate vicinity will be affected." "Chun, that system will deplete oxygen levels where you are," Reynolds protested. "You'll lose consciousness." "Better than letting these explosives detonate," Maya replied, already moving back to her defensive position. "I've calculated the dispersal rate. Delta will reach me before permanent damage occurs." Outside, she heard confusion as the external warning systems activated, alerting to the imminent halon release. The hostiles would understand what was happening, but too late to escape the affected area. 10 seconds to system activation, Maya reported, securing her position and taking deep breaths to maximize her oxygen. "Delta, the hostiles will be incapacitated when you arrive. Look for me in the armory." "Hang on, Chen," Rivera's voice was tight with concern. "We're coming in hot." The system activated with a loud hiss as halon gas flooded through vents into the armory and surrounding corridors. Outside, Maya heard coughing and disoriented shouts as the hostiles struggled against the oxygen-depleting effects. Inside the armory, Maya felt the air growing thin. Her training kicked in as she controlled her breathing, conserving oxygen. Darkness edged into her vision as her body fought against the depleting air. "Chun, report," Reynolds' voice seemed distant now. "Hostiles neutralized," she managed, her words slurring slightly. "Cache secure." The last thing Maya heard before consciousness slipped away was Rivera's voice. 2 minutes out. "Hold on, Chun, just hold on." The world went dark, but she had accomplished her mission. The weapons were secure. The hostiles were neutralized. And all because she could access spaces no one else could reach. Maya awoke to the steady beep of medical equipment, the sterile scent of the base hospital filling her nostrils. Her throat felt raw, her chest tight from the effects of oxygen deprivation. Through blurred vision, she could make out figures moving around her bed. "Welcome back, specialist," came a familiar gruff voice. Captain Reynolds stood at the foot of her bed, arms crossed, but expression surprisingly lacking its usual disapproval. Maya tried to speak, but only managed a hoarse whisper. A nurse quickly offered her water, helping her take small sips. "The cache?" she finally managed to ask. "Secure," Reynolds confirmed. "All 8 hostiles in custody. Delta arrived exactly when you lost consciousness. Another minute and—" He left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. Maya nodded weakly, relief washing over her. The mission had succeeded, even if she had disobeyed direct orders to accomplish it. "I understand disciplinary action will," Reynolds cut her off with a raised hand. "We'll discuss your insubordination after the medical team clears you. For now, rest. That's an order you'd better follow." As he turned to leave, Reynolds paused at the doorway. "For what it's worth, Chun, it was good work. Unconventional, but effective." After he departed, Maya sank back into the pillows, exhaustion claiming her once more. When she next awoke, the room was dimmer, night having fallen outside her window. This time, a different visitor occupied the chair beside her bed, Staff Sergeant Rivera, his imposing frame looking oddly out of place in the small hospital chair. "They said you'd be waking up soon," he explained, noticing her surprise. "Thought someone should be here when you did." Maya adjusted herself to a sitting position, her body aching but her mind clearer. "Didn't expect it to be you, Sergeant." Rivera shrugged, his usually stern face thoughtful. "You know what we found when we breached Kilo? All 8 hostiles. Unconscious, precisely as you predicted. Cache untouched. And you, half dead but still gripping your sidearm." A reluctant smile tugged at his lips. "Gotta admit, it was impressive." "Just doing my job," Maya replied, the phrase automatic. "No," Rivera countered, leaning forward. "Your job was communication support. What you did went far beyond that." He paused, studying her with new consideration. "Why did you explore those tunnels? The truth." Maya met his gaze steadily. "Because everyone kept telling me what I couldn't do because of my size. I needed to find what I could do because of it." Rivera nodded slowly. "The team's been talking about what happened out there. About you." "Let me guess," Maya said dryly. "They're surprised the tiny communications specialist didn't get herself killed." "Actually," Rivera replied, "they're wondering why someone with your tactical instincts was stuck in support division in the first place." Before Maya could respond, the door opened and Senior Medical Officer Captain Layla Harrison entered, clipboard in hand. "Good evening, Specialist Chen," she greeted, reviewing the monitors. "Your oxygen levels have stabilized nicely. Another day of observation, and you should be cleared for light duty." "Thank you, Doctor," Maya responded. "Any permanent damage?" "Nothing significant," Harrison assured her. "Though I'd recommend breathing exercises for the next few weeks to help your lungs recover fully." She glanced at Rivera. "Don't tire my patient, Sergeant. She needs rest." After the doctor left, Rivera stood. "I should go." "But Chun, what you did out there, making the impossible possible, that's what special operations is really about." He moved toward the door but turned back briefly. "Rest up. You might be getting a different kind of visitor tomorrow." Maya spent a restless night, her dreams filled with dark tunnels and the hiss of halon gas. By morning, she felt stronger, eager to leave the confines of the hospital bed. As she was finishing her breakfast, a knock came at her door. Colonel William Hargrove, commander of all special operations at Base Orion, entered the room. Tall, with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who had seen decades of combat, he carried an authority that filled the small space instantly. Maya attempted to sit at attention, but Hargrove waved her back. "At ease, specialist. This isn't a formal visit." He pulled up a chair and sat, regarding her thoughtfully. "Quite the performance at Outpost Kilo. Captain Reynolds gave me the full briefing." "Sir, I understand my actions constituted direct insubordination," Maya began. But Hargrove interrupted with a raised hand. "Let's set aside protocol for a moment and talk about what actually happened," he said. "You identified a threat, volunteered for a mission no one else could physically accomplish, secured high-value assets, and neutralized 8 hostile operators without firing a shot." His eyes, sharp and evaluating, held hers. "All because you're 5 feet tall and decided that was an advantage rather than a limitation." Maya remained silent, uncertain where this conversation was heading. Hargrove continued, "I've spent 30 years in special operations, Specialist Chen. In that time, I've learned that what makes an exceptional operator isn't height, weight, or how many pull-ups they can do. It's the ability to turn perceived weaknesses into decisive strengths." He leaned forward slightly. "You found pathways no one else could access, literally and figuratively." "Thank you, sir," Maya replied cautiously. "I'm not here to praise you, Chen. I'm here to understand you." Hargrove's expression was unreadable. "You spent 18 months exploring those tunnels, developing specialized equipment, training for scenarios no one assigned you." "Why?" Maya considered her answer carefully. "Because I believed my size could be tactically valuable in the right circumstances. I wanted to be prepared if those circumstances ever arose. And you kept this preparation to yourself because I was tired of being told what I couldn't do," Maya admitted, her honesty surprising even herself. "I wanted to show what I could do instead." Hargrove nodded slowly. "How would you feel about doing that on a more official basis?" Maya's pulse quickened. "Sir?" "I'm forming a specialized tactical unit," Hargrove explained. "Operators with unique capabilities that don't fit standard parameters. We call it Spectre Team." He handed her a tablet displaying a mission profile unlike anything Maya had seen before. "Your actions at Kilo demonstrated exactly the kind of unconventional thinking this unit requires." Maya reviewed the document with growing excitement. Spectre Team was designed for missions conventional teams couldn't handle, accessing restricted spaces, infiltrating secure locations through unconventional entry points, operating in environments hostile to standard tactical approaches. "This would mean reassignment from Support Division," Hargrove continued. "Specialized training. Missions that won't appear in any regular briefing." "Why me?" Maya asked, looking up from the tablet. "There must be dozens of operators with more field experience." "Experience can be gained," Hargrove replied. "But your perspective, seeing limitations as opportunities, that's rarer than you might think." He stood, straightening his uniform. "You have 24 hours to decide. If you accept, report to Training Facility C tomorrow at 0800. After Hargrove departed, Maya sat in stunned silence, the tablet still in her hands. The opportunity she had fought for was suddenly being offered, but the reality of what it meant was overwhelming. Special operations wasn't just about different missions. It meant different risks, different responsibilities. Her contemplation was interrupted by technical specialist Priya Sharma entering with a small bag. "Brought you some real clothes," she announced. "Figured you'd be sick of that hospital gown." "Thanks," Maya said, setting aside the tablet. "How's communications?" Boring without you, Priya replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. But everyone's talking about what happened at Kilo. You're something of a legend now. Maya shook her head. I just did what needed doing. What's this? Priya asked, noticing the tablet. Her eyes widened as she scanned its contents. Spectre team? Maya, this is incredible. It's also dangerous, Maya pointed out, and completely different from anything I've trained for officially. Priya fixed her with a knowing look. Except for all those nights you disappeared to practice equipment maintenance, right? She smiled at Maya's surprise. I'm your roommate. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Maya sighed. I was exploring options. And now those options have turned into something real, Priya said, gesturing to the tablet. The question is, are you ready to take the leap? Before Maya could respond, another visitor appeared, Captain Reynolds, his expression more formal than during his previous visit. Specialist Sharma, I need a moment with Chun, he requested. After Priya departed with a supportive squeeze of Maya's hand, Reynolds took the visitor's chair. I understand Colonel Hargrove has approached you about Spectre Team. Yes, sir. Maya confirmed, trying to read his reaction. I haven't given my answer yet. Reynolds was silent for a moment. You should know that I recommended against your inclusion. The statement stung, but Maya kept her expression neutral. May I ask why, sir? Because Spectre isn't just about unconventional tactics. Chun, it's about high-risk infiltration into hostile territory with minimal support. The operators selected need to function independently under extreme pressure. His gaze was steady. Your actions at Kilo were commendable but reckless. You nearly died. With respect, sir, I made a calculated decision based on available options. Maya countered. The mission succeeded. This time, Reynolds emphasized. But special operations isn't about one successful mission. It's about consistency, discipline, and following the chain of command even when you disagree with it. Maya considered his words carefully. Is that why you're here, sir? To discourage me from accepting. Reynolds surprised her by shaking his head. I'm here to make sure you understand what you're getting into. Hargrove sees potential in you, the same potential I saw when you first transferred to this base. At Maya's startled expression, he continued, Why do you think I kept rejecting your applications? You weren't ready. You needed to prove something, not to me, but to yourself. And have I? Maya asked quietly. Reynolds stood. That's for you to decide, Specialist. But know this, if you join Spectre, I'll expect more from you than from anyone else on that team. Because you'll have more to prove. He moved toward the door, but paused. 800 tomorrow. Don't be late if you're coming. After Reynolds left, Maya spent hours weighing her options. By evening, she was restless, needing to move despite the doctor's orders. She carefully disconnected her monitoring equipment and slipped out of her room, seeking the familiar comfort of movement. The hospital wing was quiet at this hour. Maya made her way to a small courtyard garden, designed to give recovering patients a peaceful space for reflection. The night air was cool against her skin as she sat on a stone bench, looking up at the stars. Didn't expect to find you here, came a voice from the shadows. Staff Sergeant Rivera emerged, apparently having been sitting in the darkness himself. Could say the same about you, Maya replied, making room on the bench. Trouble sleeping? Rivera sat beside her, his usual intensity softened in the moonlight. Always, after a mission, you? Decisions to make, Maya admitted. Big ones. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the distant sounds of the base a gentle backdrop to their thoughts. Hargrove offered you Spectre, didn't he? Rivera finally asked. Maya nodded. How did you know? Because he asked me about you first, Rivera revealed. Wanted my assessment after Kilo. And what did you tell him? Rivera looked at her directly. That you were either the craziest or the bravest soldier I'd ever seen. Probably both. A rare smile crossed his face. Also told him that if he didn't recruit you, Delta would. Maya's eyebrows rose in surprise. Delta? But I don't meet the physical requirements. After what you did at Kilo, the team voted. We'd make an exception. His expression grew serious. Special operations isn't about checking boxes, Chen. It's about getting the job done when no one else can. You proved you can do that. Reynolds thinks I'm reckless, Maya said quietly. Reynolds thinks everyone is reckless, Rivera countered. He's lost people, makes him cautious. He stood, stretching. But between us? He also recommended you for Spectre after initially opposing it. That's not something he does lightly. As Rivera prepared to leave, Maya called after him. Why? Are you telling me this? He turned back, his silhouette stark against the night sky. Because sometimes the hardest person to convince of your worth is yourself. The rest of us already see it. With that, he disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. By morning, Maya had made her decision. After being officially discharged from the hospital, she returned briefly to her quarters to change into fresh fatigues. Priya was waiting, concern etched on her face. Are you sure about this? She asked as Maya packed a small bag with essential items. Spectre operates without the usual support structures. If something goes wrong, then I'll handle it, Maya replied with quiet confidence. That's what I'm trained to do now. Priya hugged her tightly. Just come back in one piece, okay? Someone needs to keep me updated on all the base gossip. At precisely 0800, Maya stood outside Training Facility C, a nondescript building on the far edge of the base that most personnel assumed was used for storage. Taking a deep breath, she entered. Inside, the space was transformed from its exterior appearance. Advanced training equipment lined the walls, and in the center, a group of 5 operators stood in conversation with Colonel Hargrove and Captain Reynolds. All eyes turned to Maya as the door closed behind her. Specialist Chen, Hargrove acknowledged. I'm pleased you decided to join us. Maya came to attention. Reporting as ordered, sir. Hargrove gestured to the assembled group. Meet your new team. Like you, each was selected for unique capabilities that don't fit standard parameters. Maya's eyes scanned the diverse group. A wiry man with scarred hands who she recognized as the base's explosive ordnance disposal expert. A woman with the focused gaze of a sniper. 2 others she didn't recognize but whose bearing marked them as experienced operators. For the next 8 weeks, you'll undergo specialized training designed to push your individual strengths to their limits, Hargrove explained. You'll learn to function as a cohesive unit despite your differences, or rather, because of them. Captain Reynolds stepped forward. Standard operating procedures don't apply to Spectre team. You'll develop your own protocols based on your unique capabilities. But make no mistake, this isn't an excuse for undisciplined action. His gaze lingered briefly on Maya. Creativity within parameters. Innovation with purpose. That's what Spectre represents. The training began immediately. Unlike conventional special operations training, which focused on standardized skills and procedures, Spectre's approach was radically different. Each team member was encouraged to develop their distinctive strengths while learning how these could complement the others. For Maya, this meant refining her ability to navigate confined spaces while adding new skills, advanced close-quarters combat techniques adapted for her smaller frame, specialized equipment handling, tactical decision-making under extreme pressure. The team quickly discovered that Maya's size allowed her to access areas others couldn't: ventilation systems, narrow passages, restricted spaces that would have been impossible for larger operators. But her value went beyond physical access. Her perspective on tactical problems was fundamentally different, seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. During a particularly challenging training scenario 3 weeks in, the team was tasked with infiltrating a mock enemy compound to retrieve intelligence. The standard approach would have involved a frontal assault or a perimeter breach, both high risk given the compound's defenses. We could try coming in from below, Maya suggested during planning, studying the structural diagrams. The drainage system connects to the main building here. She pointed to a narrow culvert barely visible on the schematics. That's barely 18 inches wide, objected Lieutenant Cooper, the team's tactical leader. No one could navigate that. I can, Maya stated simply. Get me to the entrance point and I can access the central command room directly. The rest of the team can create a diversion at the main gate. Cooper looked skeptical but nodded. Slowly, if you can get in, can you handle whatever you find inside? You'd be on your own until we breach. I'll manage, Maya assured him, her confidence no longer the bravado of someone with something to prove, but the quiet certainty of someone who knew her capabilities. The scenario played out exactly as planned. While the rest of Spectre team engaged the compound's external defenses in a calculated diversion, Maya navigated the narrow drainage system, emerging inside the command center undetected. She secured the intelligence and disabled the internal security systems, allowing the team to breach with minimal resistance. During the debrief, Colonel Hargrove observed, "This is exactly why Spectre exists. Conventional thinking would have resulted in casualties. Unconventional approaches save lives." As training progressed, Maya found herself being pushed in ways she never imagined. Physical conditioning tailored to her body type rather than working against it. Tactical scenarios that leveraged her unique advantages. Equipment modified to her specifications rather than forcing her to adapt to standard issue. More importantly, she found acceptance among the team, not despite her differences but because of them. Her small stature, once seen as a liability, was now recognized as a critical tactical asset. When Lieutenant Cooper assigned positions for a mission, Maya's role was never an afterthought. It was often central to the plan's success. 6 weeks into training, Captain Reynolds called Maya to his office. She arrived to find him reviewing footage from their most recent exercise. "Your progress has been notable, Specialist," he said without preamble. "You've integrated well with the team." "Thank you, sir," Maya replied, standing at ease before his desk. Reynolds studied her for a moment. "You know why most people fail in special operations? It's not physical limitations. It's mental rigidity, the inability to adapt when situations change." He stood, moving to a tactical display showing their upcoming final training exercise. A complex scenario involving multiple objectives in hostile territory. "Spectre will be tested against Delta in this exercise," Reynolds explained. "They have the advantage of experience and established protocols." He turned to face her. Directly, "What do you have that they don't?" Maya considered the question carefully. "Perspectives they won't anticipate, approaches they won't expect, access to spaces they can't reach." Reynolds nodded slowly. "Exactly. In special operations, the unexpected is often the decisive factor." He returned to his desk. "I opposed your inclusion in Spectre initially because I believed you were trying to prove something to others. Now I see you were trying to prove something to yourself." "And have I succeeded, sir?" Maya asked. Reynolds's expression remained stern, but his eyes held a new respect. "That will be determined in the field, Specialist. But so far, the evidence suggests you belong exactly where you are." As Maya left the office, she passed a wall of photographs. Operators who had served in special operations units based at Orion. Men and women of various backgrounds, but all sharing a common intensity in their eyes. The physical differences between them seemed less significant than the purpose they shared. For the first time, Maya could envision her own photograph among them, not as an exception or an experiment, but as a rightful member of this elite community. Not despite being different, but because different perspectives saved lives when standard approaches failed. That night, as the team prepared for their final exercise, Lieutenant Cooper gathered them for a last briefing. "Delta has more operators, more experience and a flawless record in these exercises," he stated bluntly. But we have something they don't. His gaze moved across each team member, lingering on Maya. We see opportunities where they see obstacles. Tomorrow, we show them what that means. The team nodded in silent agreement, a shared determination binding them together. Maya felt it too, the quiet confidence of belonging exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Tomorrow would be the true test, but tonight, she knew with certainty that her size wasn't a limitation. It was her greatest tactical advantage, one that would open doors others couldn't even see. The pre-dawn air hung cold and heavy as Spectre team moved into position. Their final training exercise would pit them directly against Delta, the base's premier Special Operations Unit, in a complex scenario designed to test their distinctive approach against established tactics. Maya checked her specialized equipment one final time, the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. She caught Lieutenant Cooper watching her. "Nervous, Chen?" he asked quietly. "Focused," she corrected, adjusting her tactical vest, custom designed to her proportions. "Delta thinks they know all our capabilities. They don't." Cooper nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. "That's our advantage. Use it." The scenario was multi-layered. Infiltrate a fortified compound, retrieve 3 separate intelligence packages, neutralize a simulated biological threat, and extract, all while facing Delta Team acting as opposing forces. Conventional wisdom dictated a straightforward approach: breach the perimeter, secure objectives sequentially, extract along the safest route. Spectre had different plans. "Comes check," Cooper's voice came through Maya's earpiece. Each team member responded in sequence. "Ghost in position," Maya confirmed, using her newly assigned call sign. It had been Rivera's suggestion, a nod to her ability to access spaces others couldn't see. "Execute," Cooper ordered, and Spectre's unconventional strategy unfolded, while the rest of the team created a diversion at the compound's northern edge. Maya approached from the east, alone, moving through a drainage culvert barely large enough for her frame. Intelligence had identified this as a structural weakness, but one deemed inaccessible in standard assessments. The narrow passage opened into a maintenance shaft beneath the compound's main building. Maya moved silently through the darkness, using her specialized training to navigate without detection. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from exhilaration. This was what she had prepared for, turning perceived limitations into decisive advantages. "Delta has engaged with the diversion," came the update through her comm. "They're committing 70% of their forces to the northern approach." Maya smiled to herself. The opposition was responding exactly as anticipated, focusing on the threat they could see while overlooking the one they couldn't. Reaching a junction point in the ventilation system, Maya paused. According to the schematics, she was directly beneath the compound's command center, where the first intelligence package would be located. She carefully removed a small fiber optic camera from her gear, threading it through a ventilation grate to survey the room above. 4 Delta operators in defensive positions, all focused on the door and windows, the expected entry points. None were watching the floor vent in the corner. "Command center has 4 tangos," Maya reported softly. "Focused outward." "I have access through ventilation." "Proceed with extraction," Cooper confirmed. "Team is maintaining diversion." With practiced precision, Maya removed the ventilation grate and slipped into the command center, staying low in the shadows. The Delta operators remained fixated on the expected threats, unaware of her presence until she had already accessed the intelligence package, a simulation drive containing critical data. "Package 1 secured," she confirmed, already moving back toward the ventilation shaft. One of the Delta operators turned, finally sensing movement. "Contact," he shouted, but Maya had already disappeared back into the shaft, the grate replaced behind her. "What the hell?" she heard through the wall. "Check the vents." Too late. Maya whispered to herself, already moving through the narrow passages toward her second objective. The biological containment lab would be more challenging, higher security, more personnel. Above her, she could hear Delta operators responding to the breach, their movements heavy and purposeful. They would be checking obvious access points, securing doors and windows, all standard procedure. But they weren't trained to think like she did, to see pathways where others saw solid barriers. Delta is redistributing forces, reported Specialist Ramirez, Spectre's surveillance expert. They're pulling teams from the perimeter to reinforce internal security. Perfect, Cooper responded. Phase 2 initiated. While Delta concentrated on internal security, the rest of Spectre team would breach the now under-defended perimeter, creating multiple simultaneous threats. It was a strategy that leveraged their individual specialties: Maya's ability to access restricted spaces, Ramirez's surveillance expertise, Lieutenant Jackson's unprecedented skill with electronic countermeasures. Maya reached the access point beneath the biological containment lab. This would be more difficult. The ventilation system was secured with sensor grids designed to detect unauthorized access. Standard infiltration would be impossible. But Maya wasn't standard. She removed a specialized device from her pack, something she had designed herself during training. It would create a localized disruption in the sensor grid, just long enough for her to slip through undetected. The technology wasn't new, but her application was innovative, calibrated specifically for her smaller profile, requiring less power and creating a smaller detectable footprint. Initiating sensor bypass, she reported. 30-second window. The device activated with a soft hum. Maya watched the indicator lights, counting down in her head. When the final light flashed green, she moved swiftly through the opening, navigating the narrow duct with practiced ease. The containment lab was below her now, visible through another grate. 2 Delta operators stood guard over the simulated biological sample, both alert, both watching all conventional entry points. Advantage doesn't come from doing the same things better. It comes from doing things others can't even imagine. He looked at her with new respect. You didn't just complete the mission, Chun. You expanded our understanding of what a mission could be. In the post-exercise briefing, Colonel Hargrove and Captain Reynolds reviewed the operation with both teams. The tactical display showed Maya's infiltration routes highlighted in red, paths through the compound that had previously been considered inaccessible. Spectre team successfully retrieved all 3 objectives with minimal detection and 0 casualties, Hargrove summarized. They accomplished this not by overwhelming force or superior numbers, but by utilizing unique capabilities to access spaces conventional tactics couldn't reach. Reynolds stepped forward. The purpose of this exercise wasn't to determine which team is better. It was to demonstrate how different tactical approaches can succeed in different circumstances. He looked directly at Maya. Specialist Chun's infiltration demonstrated something we too often forget in operational planning: that physical attributes we traditionally consider limitations can become decisive advantages in the right context. After the briefing, as the teams dispersed, Maya found herself approached by operators from both units, asking questions about her techniques, her equipment modifications, her perspective on tactical problems. The same people who had once dismissed her as too small for special operations now sought her insights on accessing restricted spaces. Later that afternoon, Maya received a summons to Colonel Hargrove's office. She arrived to find both Hargrove and Reynolds waiting, along with a 3rd officer she didn't recognize, a woman with Colonel's Eagles and the insignia of Joint Special Operations Command. Specialist Chun, Hargrove greeted her. Allow me to introduce Colonel Diane Martinez, JSOC Strategic Development Division. Maya came to attention. Ma'am. Colonel Martinez studied her with interest. At ease, Specialist. I observed your performance in today's exercise. Very impressive application of unconventional tactics. Thank you, ma'am. Martinez motioned for Maya to sit. I'm here because JSOC is developing a new initiative, specialized infiltration units designed to access locations previously considered impenetrable by conventional means. She slid a folder across the desk. We're calling it Project Threshold. Your approach to today's exercise is exactly what we've been looking for. Maya opened the folder, scanning its contents. Project Threshold involved creating small, specialized teams capable of accessing high-security facilities through unconventional entry points, precisely what she had demonstrated in today's exercise. We're assembling a pilot team, Martinez continued. Operators with unique capabilities that turn traditional limitations into tactical advantages. After reviewing your performance records and watching today's exercise, we'd like you to join as our infiltration specialist. Maya looked up from the folder, momentarily speechless. May I ask why me specifically, ma'am? Surely there are more experienced operators. Experience can be gained, Martinez replied, echoing Hargrove's words from weeks earlier. But your perspective, seeing pathways where others see barriers, that's much rarer. She leaned forward slightly. Do you know how many high-value targets we've been unable to access because the entry points were too restricted for conventional operators? How many intelligence packages remain unsecured because the locations are considered impenetrable? The world is built for average-sized people, Reynolds added, which means security systems are designed with average-sized infiltrators in mind. Your ability to access spaces others can't even attempt gives us operational capabilities we've never had before. Maya considered the implications. When would this assignment begin? Immediately, Martinez answered. Initial training would take place at our specialized facility in Nevada, followed by integration with the rest of the Threshold team. She paused. This is entirely voluntary, of course. It would mean leaving Spectre and your established connections. Here, may I have some time to consider? Maya asked. 24 hours, Martinez nodded. This is a significant step. Consider it carefully. After the meeting, Maya sought solitude to process this unexpected development. She found herself at the base's perimeter fence, looking out at the desert beyond. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape, a visual reminder of how perspective changed what was visible and what remained hidden. Heard Martinez offered you Threshold, came a voice behind her. Maya turned to find Lieutenant Cooper approaching. News travels fast, she observed. Cooper leaned against the fence beside her. In special operations, it always does. He was silent for a moment. It's a good opportunity. Specialized infiltration is exactly what you've been training for, even before you knew it. I'd be leaving Spectre just as we're becoming a cohesive unit, Maya pointed out. True, Cooper acknowledged. But sometimes the path forward means leaving something valuable behind. He glanced at her. The question isn't whether you'd be good for Threshold. The question is whether Threshold would be good for you. Maya considered this. What would you do? Doesn't matter what I would do, Cooper replied. This isn't about fitting into someone else's expectations anymore. That's the whole point of everything you've accomplished. As darkness fell across the base, Maya sought out one final conversation with the person who had initially dismissed her from special operations. She found Captain Reynolds in the training facility, reviewing footage from the day's exercise. Sir, do you have a moment? She asked from the doorway. Reynolds looked up, motioning her inside. Thinking about Martinez's offer? Yes, sir, Maya confirmed, taking a seat across from him. I'd value your perspective. Reynolds studied her for a moment. 6 weeks ago, I would have told you to stay where you were comfortable, in support division, working with systems. You understood. He gestured to the screen showing her infiltration route through the compound. Now I'm going to tell you something different. Go where your unique capabilities create the most value. Even if that means leaving Spectre? Spectre will continue its mission, Reynolds assured her. But Project Threshold represents something bigger, the recognition that diversity of physical capabilities creates tactical advantages we've barely begun to explore. He leaned forward. You proved that someone your size could succeed in special operations. Now you have the opportunity to help redefine what special operations can accomplish. Maya nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place in her mind. Thank you, sir. One more thing, Chun, Reynolds added as she stood to leave. Whatever you decide, remember that the path that brought you here wasn't about overcoming limitations. It was about recognizing that what others see as limitations are actually specialized capabilities in the right context. That night, Maya packed her few personal belongings, her decision made. As she folded her uniforms, Priya entered their shared quarters. So you're accepting Threshold, Priya observed, noting the packed bag. How did you know? Maya asked. Priya smiled. Because it's exactly what you've been working toward, not just proving you belong, but changing the definition of what belonging means. The next morning, Maya reported to Colonel Martinez's temporary office, her decision firm. I accept the position with Project Threshold, she stated. Martinez nodded, a smile of satisfaction crossing her face. Excellent. There's a transport leaving at 0900 for the Nevada facility. She extended her hand. Welcome to the next evolution of Special Operations Specialist Chun. As Maya boarded the transport later that morning, she found Staff Sergeant Rivera waiting beside the aircraft. Came to see you off, he explained. And to say something I should have said earlier. Maya raised an eyebrow questioningly. Thank you, Rivera said simply, for showing us a blind spot in our tactical thinking we didn't even know existed. He handed her a small package. From Delta and Spectre. Something to remember where you started. Inside the package was a custom patch, a stylized ghost figure moving through a narrow opening, with the words, "The impossible is just a matter of perspective," embroidered beneath. As the transport lifted off, carrying her toward a future she had never imagined possible just months earlier, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had begun by trying to prove that her size wasn't a limitation. She ended by demonstrating that it was, in fact, her greatest tactical advantage. In a world designed for average-sized people, she had found pathways others couldn't see and spaces others couldn't reach. And in doing so, she hadn't just secured her place in special operations, she had expanded the very definition of what special operations could achieve. The impossible, as her new patch proclaimed, was indeed just a matter of perspective. 6 months later, the Nevada desert stretched vast and unforgiving outside the specialized training facility that housed Project Threshold. Inside a secure briefing room, Maya Chen studied holographic projections of what military intelligence described as impenetrable, the Raisin Complex, a fortified research facility buried deep within a hostile nation's mountainous region. Conventional infiltration has been deemed impossible, Colonel Martinez explained to the assembled Threshold team. Multiple agencies have attempted penetration, all have failed. The facility's security measures were legendary: cutting-edge surveillance systems, biometric access controls, pressure-sensitive flooring, thermal detection grids. The blueprints rotating above the table showed no viable entry points for standard operators. Which is precisely why we exist, Maya observed, her confidence no longer tentative but grounded in proven capability. The past 6 months had transformed her from a specialist with unique potential into an elite infiltration expert who had redefined tactical possibilities. Colonel Martinez nodded. Intelligence indicates the complex houses advanced weapons research. That poses an imminent threat to global security. We need to confirm the nature of this research and extract critical data before development reaches final stages. What's our insertion point? asked Captain Liam Reeves, Threshold's team leader. Martinez's expression was grim. That's the problem. There isn't one, at least not by conventional assessment. Maya stepped forward, studying the facility schematics with practiced eyes. Where others saw impenetrable walls and security measures, she saw possibilities, gaps, potential weaknesses. Her perspective had been sharpened through intensive training and successful field operations that had once been deemed impossible. There, she finally said, pointing to a network of narrow maintenance shafts designed to service the facilities. Extensive cooling systems. The northern access tunnel narrows to 18 inches at this junction. Security protocols classify it as non-viable for human passage. For most humans, Reeves noted with a knowing smile. Maya nodded. It connects directly to the central cooling system, which services the main research level. The thermal sensors would detect conventional entry, but not if the entrance thermal signature matches the ambient temperature of the cooling system, completed Dr. Eliza Wright, Threshold's technology specialist. We could develop a thermal regulation suit calibrated specifically for those conditions. Exactly, Maya confirmed. I could navigate the shaft, bypass the primary security grid, and access the research level directly. From there, I could deactivate selected systems to allow the rest of the team entry through the service entrance. Martinez studied the proposal, eyes narrowed in concentration. The shaft dimensions give you less than 2 inches of clearance on all sides. Even for you, that's pushing the limits of viability. With respect, Colonel, Maya replied, my limits aren't what they used to be. The room fell silent as Martinez considered. Finally, she nodded. Develop the operational plan. If it passes security assessment, we'll present it to Joint Command. 3 weeks later, Maya found herself suspended beneath a transport helicopter as it approached the Raisin Mountain Range under cover of darkness. The specialized insertion team had deployed her 5 miles from the target. Any closer would risk detection by the facility's perimeter sensors. Ghost, comms check, came Reeves' voice through her encrypted communication system. 5 by 5, Maya confirmed, adjusting the specialized equipment harnessed to her back. Everything had been custom designed for this mission. Lightweight tools, compact surveillance equipment, the thermal regulation suit that would mask her presence from the facility's advanced detection systems. Remember, this is reconnaissance and data extraction only, Reeves emphasized. No direct engagement unless absolutely necessary for mission success or survival. Copy that, Maya acknowledged as the helicopter reached the drop point, ready for insertion. The cable lowered her silently into the darkness below, depositing her on a rocky outcropping half a mile from the facility's unmarked perimeter. As the helicopter disappeared into the night sky, Maya activated her night vision and began the careful approach toward her target. The intelligence was accurate. The facility's external security was formidable. Sensor arrays disguised as natural rock formations. Surveillance drones disguised as local birds. Motion detectors hidden beneath loose stones. But Maya had been trained to see what others missed, to find paths others couldn't imagine. She moved like a ghost across the terrain, identifying and exploiting minute blind spots in the security coverage, timing her movements between sensor sweeps, using the environment itself as concealment. Where conventional operators would have been detected instantly, Maya's smaller profile and specialized training allowed her to slip through gaps in the security net. Reaching the facility's outer wall, Maya identified the maintenance access point, a narrow tunnel built into the mountain itself, designed to allow service robots access to the external cooling systems. The opening was secured with a heavy grate and electronic locks. I've reached access point Bravo, she reported softly. Beginning bypass sequence. Using specialized tools, Maya carefully disabled the electronic lock without triggering security. Protocols. The grate swung open silently, revealing a dark tunnel barely wide enough for her shoulders. "I'm entering the maintenance shaft," she updated, activating thermal regulator. Her specialized suit hummed softly as it adjusted her external thermal signature to match the ambient temperature of the cooling system. To the facility's sensors, she would register as nothing more than a minor temperature fluctuation within expected parameters. The tunnel narrowed as she progressed, forcing her to remove her tactical pack and push it ahead of her. The confined space would have induced claustrophobia in most operators, but Maya had trained extensively for these conditions. She controlled her breathing, moving with methodical precision through passages that would have been impossible for larger individuals to navigate. "Approaching junction point," she reported after 20 minutes of careful progress. "Visibility limited." Proceeding by touch. The shaft narrowed further, forcing Maya to turn sideways, her chest and back brushing against the cold metal walls. For a moment, she felt a flicker of doubt. The passage seemed to be narrowing beyond even her capability to traverse. She paused, controlling her breathing. "Narrow section is tighter than intel suggested," she reported. "Assessing viability. Can you proceed?" Reeves asked, tension evident in his voice. Maya examined the passage ahead, calculating dimensions against her body's capabilities. "Yes," she finally determined. "But I'll need to exhale completely to reduce chest diameter." "Your call, Ghost," Reeves replied. "Abort if necessary." But Maya had not come this far to turn back. With careful precision, she exhaled fully, creating those crucial extra millimeters of space needed to squeeze through the narrowest section. For 40 seconds, she inched forward with lungs empty, fighting the body's natural instinct to breathe, until finally the passage widened enough for her to draw air again. "Narrow section cleared," she reported, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction, proceeding to primary junction. The maintenance shaft eventually opened into a larger service area, still confined by conventional standards, but practically spacious compared to what she had just navigated. Here, the facility's main cooling system connected to various sections of the complex. Maya consulted the schematics displayed on her specialized wrist unit. "I'm at the central junction. Research level is accessible through the northeastern conduit." "Proceed with caution," Reeves instructed. "Security density increases significantly from this point." The northeastern conduit led upward, requiring Maya to climb through a vertical shaft using specialized grips that left no marks on the surfaces. After 15 minutes of careful ascent, she reached a secondary maintenance panel, the final barrier between her and the facility's restricted research level. "I've reached access point Delta," she reported, preparing for final breach. This would be the most dangerous moment, transitioning from the maintenance system into the actively monitored facility. One error, one oversight, would trigger alarms and compromise the entire mission. Maya attached a specialized sensor to the panel, scanning for security measures that might not have appeared in the intelligence briefing. "Additional security detected," she reported. "Motion sensors inside the access panel, not on the schematics." "Can you bypass?" Reeves asked. Maya studied the readings. "Affirmative. But I'll need to create a localized electromagnetic pulse to temporarily disable them. That will leave evidence of tampering when systems reboot." "How long until reboot?" "Approximately 3 minutes," Maya calculated. "Enough time to access and secure position if I move immediately after pulse." After a moment's consideration, Reeves made the call. "Proceed with EMP. Mission priority overrides stealth concerns at this stage." Maya placed the specialized EMP device against the panel. "Executing in 3, 2, 1. The device activated with a soft pulse, temporarily disabling all electronic systems within a 6-inch radius, just enough to affect the panel's security without impacting broader facility systems. Maya immediately removed the panel and slipped through the opening. replacing it behind her before the systems could reboot. She found herself in a narrow maintenance corridor adjacent to the main research area. Security cameras covered the primary hallways, but the service passages between them, designed for maintenance personnel and equipment, provided limited cover for movement. "I'm inside," she confirmed. Moving to primary objective. Using the facility schematics and real-time sensor data from her equipment, Maya navigated through the maintenance corridors, avoiding security personnel and active surveillance zones. Her smaller stature allowed her to use pathways and concealment options that would have been impossible for conventional operators. After 20 minutes of careful maneuvering, she reached the central research lab, a large, heavily secured room where the most sensitive work was conducted. According to intelligence, the critical data was stored on isolated servers within this lab, disconnected from external networks to prevent remote hacking. "I have eyes on the primary objective," Maya reported, observing the lab through ventilation. "Great. 4 personnel present. Security systems active." Inside the lab, scientists worked at various stations, monitored by armed security personnel. The isolated server was visible in a reinforced glass enclosure at the center of the room, physical separation providing another layer of security. "We need that data," Reeves emphasized. "Options?" Maya studied the room's layout, the personnel movements, the security measures. Then she noticed something: a maintenance access point beneath one of the workstations, likely for servicing the extensive power systems required by the lab equipment. It would lead directly to the space beneath the raised flooring where the server's connections were housed. "I can access the server connections from below," she determined. "Bypass the need to enter the lab itself." "That wasn't in the facility schematics," Martinez cut in, monitoring the operation from headquarters. "It wouldn't be," Maya explained. "It's a standard design feature in advanced research facilities, maintenance access for power and cooling systems. They don't document it separately because it's considered part of the basic infrastructure. The kind of detail only someone who had spent years studying how to access supposedly inaccessible spaces would recognize." "Proceed," Reeves authorized. "But maintain zero visibility to lab personnel." Maya moved to the maintenance access point, carefully removing the panel and slipping into the narrow space beneath the lab's raised floor. Here, network cables and power systems created a complex maze in near-total darkness. Using specialized vision equipment, she navigated between components until reaching the area directly beneath the server enclosure. "I'm in position," she reported, locating primary data connections. The server's security focused on preventing physical access to the hardware itself, but the data connections running beneath the floor were less thoroughly protected, a vulnerability born from the assumption that no one could access this space undetected. Maya attached a specialized data extraction device to the main connection line, a passive system that would copy all data flowing through the cables without disrupting normal operations. "Data extraction initiated," she confirmed. Estimated completion time 12 minutes. As the device worked, Maya remained perfectly still in the confined space, controlling her breathing, minimizing her presence. Above her, separated by mere inches of flooring, scientists continued their work, unaware of her proximity. "Ghost, be advised," came Reeves' suddenly urgent voice. "External security systems are showing increased activity. Possible security. Sweep in progress." "Understood," Maya acknowledged quietly. "Data extraction at 60%. Need at least 4 more minutes for critical files." Through her comms, she could hear the tactical team monitoring the facility's security channels. Something had triggered increased vigilance, perhaps the momentary electromagnetic disruption from her earlier breach, perhaps routine security protocols. Either way, her extraction window was closing faster than anticipated. "Ghost, facility is initiating full security scan," Reeves updated. All systems, including subsystems and maintenance areas. Maya's mind raced through options. The scan would detect the unauthorized data connection, triggering a facility-wide alert. Mission compromise was imminent unless she could create an alternative explanation for the anomalies. I need a distraction, she decided. Something to draw attention away from internal systems. Options? Reeves prompted. Maya examined the facility's power distribution network visible from her position. I can trigger a partial power fluctuation in the exterior sensor grid. Security will attribute the internal anomalies to power system issues rather than infiltration. Do it, Reeves authorized. But maintain your position until data extraction completes. With careful precision, Maya created a controlled disruption in the power distribution system, enough to cause noticeable fluctuations in peripheral systems, without affecting the critical research equipment or the data extraction in progress. Above her, alarms began to sound. She heard rapid movement as security personnel responded to the apparent system malfunction. The diversion was working, attention focused outward rather than on the subtle data extraction happening beneath their feet. Data extraction complete, Maya reported as her device signaled completion. Disengaging and preparing for exfiltration. Disconnecting the extraction device, Maya began carefully retracing her path through the maintenance systems. Security. Personnel were now actively checking all facility systems, making her original extraction route too risky. Primary exfil route compromised, she reported. Implementing contingency. The contingency route was even more challenging, a vertical waste management shaft that would lead to the facility's external disposal system. It would be narrower, potentially containing hazardous materials, and would emerge farther from her extraction point. But it would likely remain unchecked during the current security focus on electronic systems. Proceed with caution, Reeves instructed. Team is standing by at secondary extraction point. Maya located the access panel for the waste management system, a narrow opening barely 16 inches in diameter. Without hesitation, she removed the panel and entered the confined vertical shaft, using specialized equipment to control her descent through the dark, confined space. The shaft descended nearly 100 feet through the mountain, periodically narrowing at junction points where different sections of the facility connected to the main waste system. At each junction, Maya had to adjust her position, sometimes contorting her body to navigate past obstacles that would have completely blocked larger individuals. Passing Junction 3, she reported, encountering liquid contaminants. Sealing equipment. The lower sections of the shaft contained processed wastewater from the facility's operations. Not immediately hazardous, but potentially damaging to her specialized equipment. Maya sealed her gear and continued downward, ignoring the increasingly uncomfortable conditions. After 20 minutes of careful descent, she reached the external access point, a heavily graded opening where the facility's processed waste was expelled into a containment area before further treatment. The grate was secured from the outside, designed to prevent entry rather than exit. I've reached the external access point, she reported. Containment grate is secured with reinforced bolts. Cannot breach from the side. Stand by, Reeves responded. Team is approaching your position to assist breach. Maya waited in the confined space, controlling her breathing despite the increasingly stale air. Above her, she could hear the facility security system still responding to the power fluctuations she had triggered. The diversion continued to hold. Minutes later, she heard movement outside the grate. Ghost, we're at your position, came the voice of Lieutenant Jackson, one of Threshold's extraction specialists. Preparing to breach containment grate. Stand clear. Maya pressed herself against the side of the shaft as specialized cutting tools began working on the external grate. Within moments, the barrier was removed and Maya emerged from the narrow opening into the night air, where the extraction team waited in concealed positions. Package secure, she confirmed, patting the specialized container holding the extracted data. Ready for transport. The team moved swiftly across the rugged terrain, utilizing pre-planned routes to avoid the facility's external sensors, now operating on emergency protocols following the power disruption. Within 30 minutes, they reached the extraction point, where specialized transport waited to remove them from hostile territory. As the transport lifted off, Maya allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. A mission deemed impossible by conventional assessment standards had been completed successfully. Not by overcoming physical limitations, but by leveraging them as tactical advantages. 48 hours later, Maya stood in JSOC headquarters as Colonel Martinez briefed senior military leadership on the operation's results. The data extracted from the Reizen facility confirms development of destabilizing weapons technology. Martinez explained, displaying analysis on the briefing room screens. Thanks to Specialist Chen's successful infiltration, we now have complete technical specifications and development timelines. The assembled officers studied the information with grave expressions. General Richard Hamilton, head of Joint Special Operations Command, turned to Maya. Specialist Chen, I understand conventional infiltration assessment deemed this mission impossible, he stated. Yes, sir, Maya confirmed. By standard parameters. And yet you succeeded where multiple previous attempts failed, Hamilton observed. Explain your approach. Maya considered her response carefully. Sir, conventional tactical assessment tends to evaluate infiltration viability based on average physical parameters. My approach was to identify access points specifically viable for someone with my physical dimensions, pathways that wouldn't even be considered in standard assessment. Hamilton nodded thoughtfully. In other words, what we've been classifying as impossible has really been impossible for operators of conventional size. Precisely, sir, Maya agreed. The Reizen facility was designed to prevent infiltration by individuals meeting standard physical parameters. My success wasn't about overcoming limitations. It was about recognizing that different physical attributes create different tactical opportunities. The general turned to Colonel Martinez. I want a complete reassessment of all facilities currently classified as impenetrable using these new parameters. And I want thresholds infiltration methodology incorporated into our strategic planning. At all levels. Yes, sir, Martinez acknowledged. After the briefing, Maya was approached by Captain Reeves. The general was impressed, he noted. Not just with the mission success, but with the paradigm shift it represents. Maya nodded. For years, Special Operations has selected for certain physical attributes, assuming they represented optimal capabilities. But optimal is context-dependent. And you've proven that contexts exist where conventional physical attributes are actually disadvantages. Reeves completed the thought. You've fundamentally changed how we'll approach tactical assessment going forward. Later that day, Maya received an unexpected visitor in Threshold's Operations Center, Colonel Reynolds, her former commander who had initially deemed her too small for special operations. Specialist Chun, he greeted her. Or should I say Chief Warrant Officer Chun. He handed her an official document, promotion orders recognizing her contributions and elevating her rank. Maya accepted the document with surprise. Thank you. Sir, I wasn't expecting this. Few people change the fundamental paradigms of their field, Reynolds observed. You've done exactly that. He studied her with newfound respect. I once told you that your size was a limitation. I was wrong. It wasn't a limitation, it was a specialized capability we hadn't learned to properly utilize. It took both perspectives to reach this point, Maya acknowledged. If you hadn't rejected my initial application, I might never have developed the alternative approach that proved successful. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes the greatest innovations come from those who've been told what they supposedly can't do. He extended his hand. Congratulations, Chief. You haven't just earned your place. You've created an entirely new one. That evening, as Maya packed for her next deployment, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. From a communications specialist deemed too small for special operations to a chief warrant officer who had redefined what special operations could accomplish. She picked up the specialized equipment that had helped make the impossible possible, tools designed not to overcome her physical attributes, but to leverage them. Where conventional wisdom saw limitations, she had seen distinctive capabilities waiting to be utilized. On her desk sat a framed photograph, the original Spectre team gathered after their final training exercise. Beside it stood a newer image, Threshold team after the successful Raisin operation. Different units, different missions, but connected by a common thread, the recognition that diversity of capabilities created tactical advantages, impossible to achieve through standardization alone. Maya touched the threshold patch on her uniform, a stylized figure moving through a narrow opening. With the words that had come to define her approach to impossible challenges, the path exists for those who can see it. The next morning, as she prepared for a briefing on their next operation, Colonel Martinez pulled her aside. "I thought you should know," Martinez said quietly. "Based on your Raisin success, 3 other branches have initiated programs to identify and recruit operators with specialized physical attributes similar to yours. They're calling it the Chun paradigm, the recognition that tactical advantage comes from diversity of capabilities, not standardization of them." Maya absorbed this information with a sense of purpose that transcended personal accomplishment. What had begun as her individual journey to prove her worth had evolved into something far more significant, a fundamental shift in how military operations approached human capability. It was never about being good enough despite being different. She realized aloud. It was about recognizing that being different created capabilities others didn't possess. Martinez nodded in agreement. The most powerful revelation isn't discovering what you can do that others can. It's discovering what you can do that others can't. She gestured toward the briefing room where the team waited, ready to show us another impossible path. Maya smiled, confidence radiating from her 5-foot frame, no longer apologizing for her size but embracing it as her greatest tactical advantage. "Always, Colonel. That's what I was built for." As she joined her team for the briefing, Maya knew that her greatest contribution wasn't just the missions she had completed or would complete in the future. It was the doors she had opened for others who didn't fit conventional parameters, the recognition that in the right context, what others dismiss as limitations become the exact capabilities needed to accomplish the impossible. She had entered a world that told her she was too small for special operations. She had transformed it into one that recognized she was exactly the right size for missions no one else could accomplish. The impossible, as she had proven, was just a matter of perspective. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.